Well, welcome once again to the Ahern video podcast. This is part 2 of how to compete with the big boys. Last week I discussed determining your cost, and I discussed all these terminologies that all these experts use, and I said, look, take all of your line haul costs. If you're a trucking company, to get that truck out on the road, you need to put that cost in there. You also need to put in unanticipated costs. You need to factor in the cost of turnover. You need to factor in every single line item expense. Your larger companies, they allocate accounting here, they allocate safety there, they allocate this, they allocate that. But ultimately the bottom line is all of those things are associated with operating a trucking company. And I say they're associated with operating a truck. You can argue with me all day long, but here's the bottom line. If you know what all those costs are and you load it into your rate and you know what your predetermined profit is, you are going to be able to make a profit. Now with that stated, if your rates are too high, because your overhead's too high, then what do? You plan your expenses to your profit. I've grown up in this industry. I'm educated, but I'm a trucker. I started loading trucks on the docks when I was 15 years old. And we have a tendency to make trucking very difficult. And we know it's a very cyclical business. We know it's a very stressful business. But remember, 60 to 70% of your trucks are 1 to 99 trucks. That is middle America. So those 60 to 70% of those trucking companies that are middle America, this is your retirement account. The point I'm trying to make is that you need to define your cost. Once you define your cost, you also have to embrace technology. And what does that mean? Doesn't mean you got to go out and spend $200,000, but you need a system that's going to track your cost on every single dispatch for every single lane, for every single customer. Because that's ammunition you can use when you go in for a rate increase. You can say, look, I hauled 400 loads in this specific area. Here's my cost. Here's the rate you paid me. Here's the bottom line. I'm out of an operating loss. If the customer won't give you a rate increase based on being able to show him or her hardcore evidence, you start planning to shift into other lanes. Our shippers fighting for rate reductions? Of course they are. But here's the reality of the situation. Finally, we're in the driver's seat. We took 10,000 trucks out of our system in the first quarter. If you've got customers who, if you haven't increased their rates in 2 years, shame on you. Now, with that stated, do you go out and expect that just because you ask for a rate increase, you're going to get it? No, but what you need to do is you need to start planning. And that's the other thing we don't do. We don't plan. What's the plan? Well, I'm just going to stay with 10 trucks until I retire. That's not a plan. Because what happens if 3 of those trucks break down? Do you ever plan for contingencies? Who would have thought that we would have the worst winter we had in 100 years? But you should plan for contingencies for things in specific areas. If you're in a tornado belt, throw an anticipated expense in for that. If you're in a floodplain, throw an anticipated expense in there. If you're in a heavy snow area, throw in an anticipated, because those all directly impact your cost. CSA, hours of service, they've all impacted our industry. The thing that's impacted our industry most, though, is technology and also public views. We're in a very litigious society today. Every day you see in the paper, "Hi, my name's Mary. I got hit by a truck and I wasn't even hurt and I got $10,000. And you probably saw the recent one where CNBC said something, and I can't repeat it, but the ATA and the Owner-Operators Association were immediately get it struck down, the ad, but it portrayed us as really not nice people. And having personally been involved in this industry my whole life, I can tell you there's not an industry I'm more proud to be part of. But with that stated, here's a reality of how to stay in business. You need to stay ahead of the technology curve. Doesn't mean you have to spend $1 billion, but you got to stay ahead. You've got to think outside the box. You've got to plan your expenses to your profit, and you have to have a plan. But most importantly, learn from your previous mistakes. Does everybody remember what happened in 2008? We went through the second Great Depression. Now what's happening? Car sales are at record volumes. They're extending credit 6 and 7 years. Truck sales, trailer sales, record volume. What does that mean? You're creating a lot more debt. And what happens in our business? We go through cycles. Creating continual debt doesn't ensure your financial security. Do you need to replace equipment? Yes. Do you need to keep it up to date? Yes. But there's other alternatives. If you're a 100% asset-based company, find a non-asset-based component to complement it so you can adjust to the marketplace quicker. If you don't have good intellectual capital, then adjust properly. But always remember the lessons that are learned from the past can carry you into the future. In our next podcast, I'm going to talk about accountability, because accountability goes a long way in not only controlling costs, but taking a company to the next level. Until next time, thank you for attending the podcast.